I think I am live everywhere. Let me check to make sure I can see myself. I didn't have any questions, so I thought I would talk about gluten this week. Yes, I am live. Very good. Okay, and so I've written about gluten a lot from all of my clients because they're dealing with health conditions. One of the first things we do is give up gluten, and it's very controversial. There's still doctors out there that say that you don't need to give up gluten unless you have a test showing that you need to give up gluten. But there are other researchers that say the opposite. So there's research by Dr. Alessio Fasano, is his name, who says that everyone needs to give up gluten, especially here in the US. Because it can cause inflammation in the body. Now, if you are healthy and strong, your intestines are strong and healthy, then you can probably tolerate it every now and then. But if you have any other health condition, then you already have inflammation going on in the body. And so gluten is not your friend. And so that's when I would remove it. So gluten is really, really difficult to remove. I know I thought I was gluten-free for a long time. And then I realized that gluten is in soy sauce. I had no idea. Soy sauce is made out of soy, right? Why would there be gluten in there? But it's in other sauces as well. It's in pasta sauces, teriyaki sauce. Even if you go to sushi restaurants, they will have gluten. A lot of times, in restaurants, they don't know the soy sauce has wheat in it. And so sometimes you have to be really careful, especially if you go out to eat, because it's just hidden in so many different things. It's better to eat at home where you can read your ingredients. I do love the Fig app. I'm not an affiliate with them. It's Fig, like the fruit, the fig, Fig. But you can put in foods that you want to avoid, and then you can scan, of course, buy foods that don't have barcodes, and you don't have to worry about that. But when you do buy a packaged food, if it's in a bag or a box or anything, you can always scan it with that app, and it will tell you if there's anything in there. Sometimes we do buy store-bought dressings. I don't, but most of us do, because dressings are really easy to make. So hopefully during the salad challenge, I'm hoping all of you are in the salad challenge, you will learn some more recipes for things like dressings. You can go back through my YouTube. There are a lot of other videos on salad dressings as well. There's one that's like 3 different dressings and one of my older ones. And so I think if you just at the top put in Holistic Gen dressings, you'll be able to get some more of those recipes, and you'll get some throughout the week this week too. And I know recently I went to a very popular fast food restaurant and got Mexican food, where you go down the line. I'm not going to name names, and you could choose salad or lettuce or burrito or whatever, make a bowl. And they made my daughter's first. It was a burrito, and so they had the flour tortilla that they set down and they filled, and then they got to me and I told them I'm allergic to gluten. I would like a salad bowl. Well, then they fixed mine with the same gloved hands that handled the burrito. Well, if you're strong and healthy, then you can probably handle that little bit of gluten that's on there. But if you are not, if you have any other condition, you have aches somewhere in your body, that's inflammation. You're already inflamed. And so you don't want that. You want someone who switches the gloves. So I will use the name Your Pie. Your Pie has a dedicated gluten-free kitchen. And so you go in there, they switch gloves, all the ingredients are separate. They're not cross-contaminating and touching. They even use a separate oven if you tell them that you want gluten-free. And so that's how you want it to be. You go to a bakery that offers gluten-free products in a place. Now, if you're inflamed, you probably aren't going to a bakery, but I just want to make a point. You go to a restaurant that has gluten-free options, most likely there is some gluten contamination in there. They handle something with gluten, they handle something with without gluten that's going to cross-contaminate. That's why like Chick-fil-A is the only place that has gluten-free French fries. Now, I don't go and eat French fries, but some people do. But if they fry the chicken nuggets or chicken fingers or fish or anything in oil, and then they put the potatoes in, the potatoes are going to get contaminated because the gluten's in the oil. Now, I don't want you eating oil, but the same thing could be on a griddle or a grill, any other utensil, a same pan or something. The gluten can get cross-contaminated. And so if you're inflamed, then that's something that you definitely want to avoid. So what happens is when we eat gluten, it's like you get a little bit of irritation in the intestines. It's just like if you got up and you banged your knee. you're going to be able to walk away. Shake it off, rub your knee, you can get over it, right? But the next day you bang your knee or you eat the gluten, you get a little more damage. The next day it gets worse. The next day it gets worse, right? And so what happens is you need to move whatever you're banging your knee on, or in the case of gluten, stop eating the gluten, because that's what's causing the inflammation. In autoimmune disease, that inflammation eventually it creates a hole, leaky gut, intestinal permeability. It has lots of different names. And so then proteins from what you eat can get through the barrier. So your intestines, it should be like a garden hose or one of those hoses. They're a little bit perforated because you want vitamins and minerals and things to go through, but you don't want anything larger. Well, the protein structures are a little bit larger. And so when you have that inflammation, that damage occurs, the proteins actually get through. And when your body senses proteins where they don't belong, it says danger, danger. They think it's a bacteria, a virus, or something like that. And so it's immediately going to start attacking it. Unfortunately, we have organs in our body where it's shooting and it's going to hit those things as well. So when the first things I do with any clients only come to me if they're having a health condition, right? We remove the gluten. So gluten has got to go. And then it can't be just for a few days. For me, when I first went gluten-free, I went gluten-free because I had an autoimmune diagnosis. My doctor told me gluten didn't matter. I decided to try it anyway. A month later, when I had blood work, my blood work was still poor. And so I went, the gluten didn't matter. And I went back to making my breads and bagels and pizza crusts that I made because I was a really big baker at the time. And then I went to a new doctor who said, no, it can take 6 months to repair the damage. So, for me, my intestines were so damaged that even after a month, proteins were still getting through, creating inflammation. And so it has to go longer. So when I work with clients, it's 6 months. And then if they're better, if all their blood markers are better, they feel good, they have high energy, there's no inflammation in the body, then occasionally they may be able to have some gluten, but it's something that we would never go back to eating regularly. I know recently I posted a reel where I got gluten. I ate gluten somewhere and I didn't get the migraine. I didn't get any side effects. I did take charcoal, which helps me. And you can go back and watch that reel. Charcoal is not something I'd recommend taking regularly because it does bind to vitamins and minerals. And so you're not going to absorb those nutrients from your other foods if you take it regularly. But it's something that I keep on hand in case I get gluten or eat something else that is inflammatory to me, or even if you're traveling and you eat anything that's off or bad, charcoal can be a good option. So I wanted to talk about a couple of symptoms that you could have with gluten. A lot of times people say, I don't have a gluten problem, because they think that it's completely related to stomach conditions, and that's not necessarily true. So gluten intolerance can be related to weight loss or weight gain. It can be related to nutritional deficiencies because remember, we get that leaky gut, things are getting through. We're not able to absorb some of the foods we do need. We're not breaking down the foods that we need to. We could have gas and bloating, constipation and diarrhea. That's what most people expect. But there could also be, excuse me, don't want to cough in the microphone, fat in the stool. You could see floaters. That's something we don't really want to talk about. Achy joints. So that is one of the biggest ones. So a lot of times when clients come to me, they have shoulder pain, knee pain. And so I'll tell them you need to go gluten-free. And they're like, well, how could that possibly be related? And so they go gluten light. And so gluten light isn't going to help. I have a tickle in my throat because those proteins are still going to get through and trigger a response. It's still going to trigger some sort of inflammatory response. And so you have to go completely gluten-free to feel the effects. And I've had clients who noticed in as little as 3 days. I told you for me, for my blood work, it took several months. But when you have achy joints, sometimes just removing them for 3 or 4 days is enough to see, wow, I feel so much better. And then start making sure that you can take it all out. Now, for some people, they can't go cold turkey. I've had clients who tell me they actually get sick when they go gluten-free. And that's because actually affects the same receptors as like morphine and opiates. And so we crave these foods because we get that soothing effect when we eat those foods. And so sometimes it can be like a drug to some people, especially those who actually need to give it up, which makes it even harder to give up. Another thing that happens is a lot of people switch from eating gluten, like breads and rolls and things like that, to gluten-free breads and gluten-free rolls, which can taste very good. However, they're made with refined rice and uh, potato starches, tapioca starch, and those can cause blood sugar spikes and can also increase inflammation in the body. So switching from a cracker to a gluten-free cracker or bread to a gluten-free bread is not healthier. It can be a good substitute as you're transitioning out and removing it out of your diet completely, but that can be hard. Like I grew up in a family where we ate bread 3 times a day. Toast or a biscuit for breakfast, a sandwich or a wrap for lunch, and then dinner we always had a roll or cornbread or something that had flour in it at dinner. And so that can be really hard, and you really have to change your whole way of thinking about your meals, right? I have so many clients who say, but I always eat crackers with my soup. What can I have with my soup? And so that can make it challenging. And there are crackers made with seeds, but it's just finding a good replacement for you or finding a new way to think about your meal. But depression can be linked to gluten, behavior issues. A lot of times with children who have trouble behaving or listening or sitting still in the classroom, they're children. Sometimes they act like that anyway, right? But a lot of times behavior can improve just by going gluten free. It can affect, the brain chemistry. It can affect depression, headaches. For me, migraines was a big one. It can even affect eczema and exhaustion. Um, a lot of times people who are infertile, they have fertility issues that can be related to gluten. And doctors don't know this. And so there's so many people who struggle with fertility, irregular menstrual cycles, and a simple switch of just taking out the gluten can help with that. Tingling and numbness in the fingers and the toes, and deterioration in the teeth. If you start having teeth issues, sometimes that can be related to gluten. It can also be related to early onset Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, autism, and ADHD. So for anyone who has some sort of brain condition they're struggling with, then gluten is a really good thing to remove. Other things related to gluten are thyroid problems. If you have a thyroid dysfunction, you've been diagnosed with any kind of thyroid condition, gluten is number one to ditch. Gluten has got to go. Absolutely no gluten at all is got to go. And you have to be a detective and make sure that everything you're eating is gluten-free. Gluten can be related to insulin resistance. A lot of times because the foods that we're eating, like the breads and the pastas, even the gluten-free ones, they can cause glucose spikes. And so that's another reason why we get rid of the gluten. All autoimmune diseases, not just thyroid, but thyroid is the main one. For some of them, dairy is number one to go. But if you have an autoimmune condition, you have inflammation in the body, the gluten needs to go. Crohn's disease is an obvious one, and any hormonal imbalance. And so it's really important if you have any sort of inflammation, hormones out of balance, behavior issues, trouble concentrating, think gluten. All of those can go back to gluten. Anyway, there are several different tests that you can have to test for different proteins. Unfortunately, there's really only one that tests for more than just one strain. So a lot of times people will have gluten testing and it'll come back saying that they're not gluten sensitive. And it's because that test only tested one of the proteins where there are several different proteins. And so it is something that really needs to be looked at long term. But I think that is all I had to say about gluten. I hope that this is helpful for those of you. If you need help finding more alternatives to gluten, please let me know. I would love to help you. I am really good at removing the gluten at this point. And I want to make sure that everyone, if that's such a simple thing to do to help with inflammation. Anyway, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Let me know if this helped you. Let me know what else you would like to hear about, because I want to make sure I'm providing information for you. Have a fabulous week and enjoy the salad challenge. I can't wait to see all of your photos.